More than 1,300 people were killed when an earthquake struck central Turkey and northwest Syria, in one of the most powerful quakes in the region in at least a century, while a second powerful shake hours later threatened to overwhelm rescue efforts. Thousands more were injured as the quake wiped out entire sections of major cities in a region filled with millions of people who have fled the civil war in Syria. The Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, said 912 people were killed, 5,383 injured, and 2,818 buildings had collapsed. In Syria, already wrecked by more than 11 years of civil war, the health ministry said more than 326 people had been killed and 1,042 injured. In the Syrian rebel-held northwest, rescuers said 147 people had died. The toll was expected to rise as rescue workers and residents searched frantically for survivors under the rubble of crushed buildings in cities on both sides of the border. Television images from Turkey showed shocked people standing in the snow in their pajamas, watching rescuers dig through the debris of damaged homes. In the southern Turkish town of Gaziantep, 150 miles from the border with Syria and 50 miles from the epicenter of the earthquake in Kahramanmaraş, residents felt aftershocks hours later. Images from Gaziantep appeared to show that the earthquake caused the collapse of the city's historic castle, an ancient and imposing stone structure atop a hill used as an observation point during Roman times. The head of the Turkish Red Crescent, the biggest humanitarian organization in Turkey and part of the International Red Cross, said it was mobilizing resources for the region and urged people to evacuate damaged homes. The head of Turkey's disaster management agency said all capabilities of our state were mobilized after the quake, warning civilians to keep communication to urgent texts only to help emergency services find survivors. Images on Turkish television showed rescuers digging through the rubble of leveled buildings in the city of Kahramanmaraş and neighboring Gaziantep, where entire high-rise blocks were destroyed. Buildings also crumbled in the cities of Adıyaman, Malatya, and Diyarbakır, where people rushed out on the street in panic. Residents in the town of Pazarcık said they feared for those trapped under fallen buildings. Nihat Altundag said the powerful shocks from the earthquake woke his family. A building collapsed just 200 meters away from where I am now, he said. The building where I live is not so tall, and was built in compliance with earthquake regulations, so it didn't collapse. Erdogan, who will be under pressure to oversee an effective response to the disaster heading to an election on 14 May, said search and rescue teams had been dispatched to the affected areas. Some text goes here: "This is the biggest disaster we've experienced in the last century after the 1939 Erzincan earthquake," he added, citing an incident in which more than 32,000 people were killed in eastern Turkey. "Lots of buildings were destroyed, there's rubble everywhere," he said. The Syrian Civil Defense, a rescue service known as the White Helmets that works to save those trapped under debris from airstrikes, said it had declared a state of emergency to rescue the many people feared trapped under collapsed buildings in areas around Idlib and across opposition-held areas in northwestern Syria. In a statement, the organization described a catastrophic situation with buildings collapsed or suffering major cracks, hundreds injured and stranded, dozens dead, and a lack of services as well as safe shelters and assembly points in stormy and snowy weather conditions and low temperatures. People in Damascus, as well as in the Lebanese cities of Beirut and Tripoli, ran into the street on foot and took to their cars to get away from their buildings in case of collapses, witnesses said. Some text goes here: "Paintings fell off the walls in the house," said Samir, a resident of Damascus, the Syrian capital. Aid groups fear the disaster will worsen the situation for Syrians already displaced after a decade of civil war. Some text goes here: "This is a disaster that will worsen the suffering of Syrians already struggling with a severe humanitarian crisis," said Karsten Hansen, of the Norwegian Refugee Council. Turkey is in one of the world's most active earthquake zones, with land stretching over the Anatolian fault line in the north of the country that has caused large and destructive tremors. The quake killed more than 17,000 people, including at least 1,000 in Istanbul, amid widespread destruction.